time to boycott India's BJP. Bharatiya Janata Party. Well, that was a webinar, an online webinar that was held yesterday, hosted by the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. Looking at its campaign to boycott BJP. Joining us on the line to help us just dissect and discuss yesterday's event, it's our guest here, Imran Shah, spokesperson for Muslim Public Affairs Committee, UK's leading organization for empowering Muslims to focus on intelligent political activism and to demand their rights. Brother Imran, thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure indeed. And, time to boycott India's BJP, a webinar that was held yesterday. Well, I think it's an initiative and a campaign that really looks into some of the issues that really not happy, especially you as the Muslim Public Affairs Committee, not happy with how the BJP really is treating Muslims there. Just first to start with, just give us an outlay of how did it go?
So for us, at least it was a great success. We had a big turnout on the event, and our speakers were absolutely amazing. We had MPACUK from the World Kashmir Freedom Movement. We had Afreen Fatima. She is one of the very young but very courageous, very articulate, and a very a steadfast Muslim activist that are emerging in India at the moment. And we also had C.J. Williman, who many of you may know. He is one of the main commenters, an independent journalist on Islamophobia. So for us, it was a big success. We had lots of people around the world. We had people from India, from UK. We had people from Sri Lanka, from Indonesia, America, and even Nigeria and other parts of the world. So, alhamdulillah, it was an amazing success.
Indeed. So, if you can share, what are some of the issues raised on those platforms that were discussed amongst the campaign?
So what's happening in India, and I don't know if it's talked about too much in South Africa. It's certainly not talked too much in the West. You have a situation where you have a party who is affiliated to the RSS, and the RSS are known to be paramilitary and also following the same sort of doctrine as Nazis, as Hitler. There has been quotes recorded in history of RSS leaders actually citing that what Hitler was doing was the same kind of purification that we want in India. So what you're dealing with, and then the RSS has been banned a number of times. The second time it was banned because when an RSS leader was assassinated Mahatma Gandhi. So we're not talking about just any sort of ordinary political party. You're talking about essentially neo-Nazis and fascists. And what they have been doing over time, over the last decade especially, has been trying to essentially eliminate any form of opposition, whether it's legal opposition in the courts. There's been a lot of protests in the recent Supreme Court decisions. Even judges and lawyers are protesting just the level of bias that they're giving towards the government. They're eliminating opposition, even in terms of political opposition, but especially scapegoating the minorities. And Muslims are definitely on the forefront of that. So in addition to the escalation and the colonization, the recent colonization of Kashmir, which has happened under Modi, who is the leader of the BJP, you've also got the persecution of Muslims. And to give you another legal example of what they're doing, they have two laws called the NRC law and the CAA law. Please Google that to look at the detail. But in essence, the combination of those two laws effectively has legal instruments to strip Indian Muslims of their citizenship. Now, where do they go? Because they can't go anywhere. They're stateless. And so they have no access to human or civil rights. So the degree of severity of what's happening in India, it cannot be understated. There are people saying that, we're looking at potential genocidal actions coming in the future if this trend still continues. The other thing that we addressed in the event is that the Hindu nationalists, which is the ideology of the RSS and the BJP, the Hindu nationalist influence is also affecting politics in the US and in the UK and in other areas where the diaspora is, and that's because they understand that if they're going to do these actions, they need to have a similar model that Zionism has when it comes to the Israeli apartheid in Palestine. And that is impacting our politics. Granted, that influence is emerging here. It's not strong as it is like with Zionists in the US and the UK, but if there is no early opposition, that is going to get stronger. And we're going to see things get even more worse when it comes to India and Kashmir under the BJP. So it is really like we had Afreen Fatima give a very powerful, very emotional speech detailing the everyday experience of Muslims, and it's almost ridiculous the amount of stuff that they can lock people up for. They don't, and it's imposed arbitrary, and they can just do it on a whim, on a bias or like a prejudice. So very serious context was happening in India, and that's why we're doing our best to support them in any way we can.
And I must say that listening to you very carefully, of course, firstly, that this event was a success. And obviously, these are issues that really needs to be spoken about. Now that issues have been raised and people know about these issues as what's happening, moving forward, just after the campaign and the event, what's now need to be done in terms of boycott? Is the boycott going through, and then boycotting is about what? Goods from India or goods that are associated with the BJP? What's the way forward?
So what we detailed on the event is our strategy for this event is to focus on primarily the BJP, but not just the BJP. We have to understand that RSS has influence mainly in the BJP. That's their main political fiefdom, but they also have influence in Congress, which is the main opposition party, and other political parties as well. So we believe as an organization, rather than having an India-wide boycott, it is better and more effective to target the ideologues that are driving this polarization and escalation, and that means targeting BJP and RSS and any organizations that are affiliated to them. What does that mean in practice? So, for example, there are two major propaganda platforms that has sprung up from in the last 5-10 years. Those are Republic TV and Up India. Now, there has been various different companies, multinationals like Samsung or Cadbury's or Toyota, Hyundai, and others that are actually paying for ads on those TV channels and on those websites. So the first point of call is that wherever we can have presence, we should call for a boycott from those type of platforms. But we're also trying to essentially build a long-term campaign. We need researchers to be able to understand where our targets should be, to be able to give the credible evidence, and we also need people across the whole world to be able to campaign and mobilize. So, and the idea of having this targeted approach is that if we have an as opposed to an India-wide approach, the problem with an India-wide approach is that it is the richest, not all of them, but it's the richest, the ones with the deepest pockets and the broadest shoulders can that are funding this essentially Islamophobia industry. And if we have an India-wide boycott, that would be a light touch on them, and it would impact the most poorest, those who may not have anything to do with Hindu nationalism at all. So in order to have the maximum impact upon those that are actually causing the hate, we want to be as targeted and as surgical as possible. And so our main focus focus right now is Republic TV. It broadcasts here in the UK, in the US, as well as India, and also up India as well. And there's means for us to try and get advertisers to boycott. This has happened before. It's happened with I believe it's a Renault, which is a car manufacturer. And so the people have set the precedent. We just need to mobilize and organize and make it much more effective and global. So that means that if there are people in South Africa that are concerned about this, please reach out to us. We are on Facebook and Twitter, and we would look to try and connect you with those that are in India and try to organize ourselves. This has to be a global movement. It cannot just simply be in pockets, and that's what we're trying to build. It's not just us trying to help out. We're trying to help build a global movement to support essentially which is a fight against fascism and Hindu supremacy inside India.
No, absolutely. We'll take details of how do people get in touch of you later on this this interview. And I mean, I must say that this comes at the right time. I'm not sure if world media know about this, as November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month, and of course, this initiative, this campaign, needs to be reflective on the rampant infringement of human rights, in particular the restriction and the criminalization of the freedom of religion exercised by Muslims around the world. Such restrictions have been enacted and policed by state actors themselves. So I've listened to Narendra Modi as he was actually addressing the BRICS summit. He spoke about that, he said that terrorism needs to be faced and need to eradicate terrorism, all sorts of, well, it's just, the speeches. But then obviously I'm listening to him, I'm saying, talking about terrorism, he's saying terrorism is the biggest problem confronting the world. Who is he referring to? And I mean, did he look at the mirror and reflect to the mirror and see what he's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, this is a similar tactic of various different political leaders. Like when you look at Macron in France, he's saying that Muslims are the ones that are separating. They're the ones that are affecting the state. But if you actually look at what he's doing, the way in which the state is interfering with religion, that is actually against the very principles in which the French Republic was based upon. So it's crossing secularism, it's crossing the whole fraternity, liberty, and all those sort of values. But because he has power and because of the anti-Muslim sentiment that has been building up over the last couple of decades, he's able to essentially get away with demonizing and essentially persecuting and harassing innocent Muslims who have nothing to do with any form of criminal act, never mind terrorism. And he's doing that for electoral gain, because you've got a neo-Nazi party led by Marine Le Pen who's chasing him up on the polls. So it's remarkable, and that cuts into the very pillars of what a democracy, civil, and human rights are based upon, and yet it's being laced as in the language of trying to save the republic, save French democracy and liberty, and so on. And the same thing that's happening here. I mean, with Modi, he's framing it as the people that he's demonizing and persecuting as the aggressors, and that's what Islamophobia always does. It always frames Muslims as the aggressors and never the victims. And even when Muslims shops are burnt down, when their houses are burnt down, when people are like brutalized due to communal violence in India, they are never ever really acknowledged fully, even in a public sense on news channels, as the victim. So that's a device. Like we as humans, we understand things in terms of the story, and if we understand they are the bad guys and the good guys, I know this sounds really patronizing and simple, but this has been happening for a long time. This is the foundations of propaganda, and Modi is essentially trying to portray that we need to deal with a terrorist threat, and he obviously just means Muslims, even though he is the one that's dividing India and subverting India and trying to gain absolute control where there is no opposition and no democracy and no liberty or secularism.
Well, now, in terms of keeping the fire burning and this campaign, let it not be just a one-day event, obviously, on what social media platforms that people need to log on so that it could keep and reach the highest numbers as possible. How do people get in touch?
So you can either please do get in touch with us via our Twitter and our Facebook. We're called Muslim Public Affairs Committee is MPACUK, and you can either go to our website. We've got a big banner that takes you to the landing page of the campaign, and what you'll see there is a brief detail of the campaign and how you can join. If you're an individual, there are actions that you can do at the bottom of the page where you can complain. Our initial campaigns towards Toyota, we're trying to get them to divest from Republic TV. If you're an organization or a group of activists, there's another button on that website that takes you to a form. If you want to be a partner in this campaign, please do fill that form out and we'll definitely reach out. And also, wherever possible, please do donate specific to this campaign. The money raised from that landing page will only go to this campaign, and that's really an important point, because sometimes we think that like a lot of this work it should be done for free, and a lot of it is. But when you look at for example, just as a clear-cut example, the Islamophobia that has grown out of the US during the war on terror over the last couple of decades. You have people like Pamela Geller, who essentially is earning 100,000 K plus dollars. You know, and that her full-time job is to essentially spread hate. That's literally her full-time job. So you've got on one side organized money and organized people, and that's why Islamophobia has become so global so quickly. And so we need to also be thinking on the same terms. How is it that we organize our own resources that are at disposal, and how is it that we essentially have use those resources to command power, to demand equality and freedom, and to essentially have our own destiny in our own hands. So if you're this way minded, if you're passionate about this, and this is definitely a global problem, then please get in touch. Our name is Muslim Public Affairs Committee UK. You can Google us, you can find us through there, but we are on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Absolutely. Brother Imran, thank you so much, and we'll keep the fire burning as well as always, and then really just make sure that we disseminate this information and the message as well. Thank you so much for your time, much appreciated, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you very much.